So I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Nick Manalisay. I'm with the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA. Most of us have heard of us from SBA loans or possibly disaster assistance. We also do disaster assistance. And the workshop that I'm doing is maximizing your WBE status. And so just to give you a little bit about my background, I've been with SBA about 27 years, all of it in government contracting. My elevator speech is that I aid and assist small businesses just like yourselves to sell their product or service to the federal government, either as a prime contractor directly or as a subcontractor to the federal government's large prime contractors. All of my expertise is in federal government contracting, and SBA has recently published some regulations and opened up a woman-owned small business federal contracting program. And so that's really the main part of what I want to talk about, and I'm going to save that for the second half of the presentation. I did want to stick with the theme about maximizing your WBE status and work my way then into the federal women-owned small business federal contract program. So with that, let's get started. First thing I wanted to do is set the context of my talk this morning. And so as I'm very familiar with the federal government's women-owned small business program, the ins and outs, the details. But as I started looking at the WBE programs that are available, you know, it actually occurred to me that there is some confusion out there. It's not a universal language out there. The other thing that occurred to me was, has anyone actually ever gotten a contract just because they were a woman? Anybody? Raise a hand. Raise a hand. See. And that's one of the things that occurred to me too is, no, you're a business owner. You have a business. You offer a product or a service first. Oh, and coincidentally, you happen to be a woman. And so you're a women business enterprise or you're a woman-owned small business. And so as I was looking at that, one of the things that occurred to me was that really what you're doing is, and what I want to try to do and walk us through in this talk is how to maximize your government opportunities, but using your WBE status. And I think it's a little bit of a different take, but I wanted to set that context before we got started. Oh, helps if we move along with the slides. Okay. So as I said earlier, there's not a universal definition. You hear the terms WBE and woman-owned small business, WOSB, and what I want to do is just let's define what they are, and then that helps everybody stay on the same page. And so a WBE is a woman-owned business enterprise, but it means different things to different entities depending on who you're talking to. Women-owned small business is a federal government definition. By the federal government, we actually have a very specific definition. You have to be a small business first, and SBA establishes size standards depending on the industry. So the first thing is you have to be a small business, and then the second thing is, in order to be a woman-owned small business, is you have to be 51% owned and controlled by a woman or women on a day-to-day basis. And so again, this will just help set the framework as we actually start talking about the programs and what does WBE status mean to you. Okay, so this is probably the most frequent question I get asked is, should I get certified? And it's not a universal answer. It really is a business decision. I just sat in on the workshop before me about making your office go green or turning your office green. And to me, that's one of the same things. It's the same kind of thing. Should I turn my office green? Well, it's a business decision. It's not a yes, no for every, universal. If you're eligible, you should get certified. I don't think so. It's a business decision, and you need to determine whether or not it makes sense for your business to get certified. The other thing is there's a lot of confusion just in general about certification. And then, well, which certification should I get? Well, that's the answer. Also depends, or it depends who you're trying to do business with. And so these are some of the things you need to sort out first about where you're at with your business, and who are you trying to market to, who are you trying to do business with, and then discern whether or not it makes sense for you to get certified, and then making sure you get certified by the right entities. One of the things I have is talking about the other golden rule. So I'm sure you've all heard about the golden rule. You know what the golden rule, right? Do unto others as others would do unto you, right? treat the others the way you want to be treated. And so the other golden rule is she with all the gold makes all the rules. So if the business entity you're trying to do business with, who has the money, says you need to be certified, then that very clearly means you need to be certified. And a corollary to that is follow the money. You know, again, questions about, well, should I get certified? What kind of certification should I get? If you're trying to do business with the federal government and you keep getting asked, are you certified? The answer is yes, you need to be certified. And at the Fed level, you very specifically need to be certified as a woman-owned small business. And so those are the couple of mind triggers that I would suggest is following the other golden rule and then following the money. One of the other confusions that comes up when we talk about certification is size versus status. Very clearly, women business enterprise is ownership status, who owns and controls the business, versus size status, which is small. SBA, we established size standards at the federal level. A lot of states, counties, they'll mirror the size program that we established. Some of them have established their own size standards. But very clearly, it's based upon the number of employees or your revenue derived over so many years. And so there is a distinction between size and ownership status. And what we're talking about today is getting women-owned business WBE certified or women-owned small business certified, and whether it makes sense for your business. One of the things, and this kind of goes hands in hand with any kind of certification, is there's a myth out there that if you get certified, you're continually being asked, are you certified? So you go get your certification, and you think magically getting that certification is going to bring in contracts. And I just want to debunk that myth. That is not true. It just makes your business more marketable, and if it makes sense that you need to get certified, you should get certified, but it's not a panacea. It's not going to cure all your ills. As soon as you get certified, contracts aren't going to fall from the sky. Okay, so let's talk about then some of the reasons, or let's talk about a specific reason of getting certified. The first thing is there are contracting preferences for being Women Business Enterprise Certified or Women-Owned Small Business Certified. And why would you do that? So just talking in general and working up, created a specific order here, talking about private large corporations, which I would distinguish from what I call federal large prime contractors. A private large corporation is a large business entity that doesn't necessarily do business with the federal government. They're, in retailing like Walmart and Rite Aid and Target, just large business entities that don't necessarily have to do business with or don't do business with the federal government. And I call those federal large prime contractors. But those entities, for instance, doing a little bit of research, looking at Walmart, they ask you to be certified, right? And they, if your business is minority owned, you may be certified by the National Minority Suppliers Development Council, NMSDC, or one of its regional affiliates. If your business is woman-owned, you may be certified by the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, WBENC, which I'll talk a little bit about as part of the federal contract program. And so if that's who you're trying to do business with, that's what I would suggest you get certified. WBENC is a very well-known organization. They do certify a lot of women business enterprises, but it's not universal. If you went to WBENC and got their certification, it does not automatically qualify you for the Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contract Program. And that's important to understand. Again, the distinction is who offers those kinds of preferences. Now getting certification, again, getting that certification, does that automatically make you going to generate business? No, it just puts you in the ball game that you get to compete with other WBEs that are trying to sell to that entity. How about the state of California? Are there any contracting preferences for women business enterprises? Anybody know? No, playing. How about Prop 209? Prop 209 says you cannot have any contracting preferences based on race or gender. So there are none. There is no certification at the state level. They do have though, two certification programs. One is small business certification, and the other is disabled veteran business enterprise. So if you are either one of those categories and you're trying to do business with the state of California, then you should come to the state, and it's through DGS, Department of General Services. Caltrans does certification too as a state agency, and those are reciprocal. So if you got one from DGS, it counts the same as if you went to Caltrans, and get certified either as a small business or as a disabled vet business enterprise. There is one exception to that, that if Caltrans, which is California's Department of Transportation, if they award a contract and it includes federal money as a part of that contract, then they're supposed to establish disadvantaged business enterprise goals, DBE, which would be similar to what is at the federal contract level, small disadvantaged business and generally like minority-owned business, minority business enterprises. That's what I was trying to say. How about LA County? Any ideas on LA County? They're similar like the state. They follow state rules, so they cannot have any women business enterprise preferences in the contracting portion. So you certainly can do business with LA County, but as a women's business enterprise, you don't get any preferences. I did want to show you their website, and if you write down, here's one thing I would write down is www.laosb.org. That's their website, if you guys don't mind pulling that up. And the reason I point is LA County sponsors the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and so on the left-hand column of the screen it says about OSB and the PTAC, PTAC. It's a fantastic resource about getting more details. I'm giving you a broad brush overview of what's available. The director of the PTAC at the LA County Office of Small Business is Debbie Cabrera-Johnson. Maybe some of you have met her or know her, but she's an excellent resource. Her and her staff will actually sit down with you, actually work with you one-on-one in getting certified. And so that's one reason I wanted to show you the website. But go ahead, can you scroll down? Can you scroll down on this website? If you scroll down, it'll actually have, go to, on the left-hand column, it says Government Business Opportunities. Up one more. There you go, right there. Click that. That actually is a great place to start when you're looking to sell to the government. This has a great list of LA County, the city, and then what I call quasi-government agencies, like the Air Quality Management District, who's outside, LA Unified School District, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA or Metro, Metropolitan Water District. So again, a great resource to have when you're actually trying to find government contracting activities to market to. Okay, getting back to LA County. So they don't have any preferences with business enterprise, women's business enterprise. But they do have a local small business enterprise preference program. So if you are local to LA County, you got to come to the county, you have to register, it's a quasi-certification, and then you get a local small business enterprise preference. I think it's a 10% preference in your bidding. Now on the website, it does talk about doing community business enterprise program, a CBE, that are made up of minority and women business enterprise owners, and that there are supposedly preferences for contractors that are certified in their CBE program. I tried to find procurements and contracts that were being solicited on this basis, but I couldn't find any. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I couldn't find any that they are actually doing contracts like that. Next, how about the city of LA? So again, you figure it's going to follow the state, so it does not have a preference, right? It doesn't have a preference. There's no contracts reserved for women-owned small businesses, and they have what's called the Business Inclusion Program and the LA BAV and the LA Business Assistance Virtual Network, basically where you go on and you register and you establish what you sell, and the city can use that network then when they're looking for sources for an item or service. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about what about quasi-government entities like the Metropolitan Water District. They also mirror the state of California, so they offer preferences in small businesses and disabled veteran business enterprises. But they don't offer any preferences as a women business enterprise owner. And the MTA or the Metro, it also mirrors the state. I guess the picture then that I want to point to you is that, so again, it comes back to discerning whether or not getting certified as a women business enterprise or a woman-owned small business is right for your business. And so knowing who you're trying to sell to and the preferences they have, it does or it does not make sense, to get certified. Federal large prime contractors are going to follow the federal government. So now that we have a woman-owned small business federal contracting program, they will be looking for subcontractors, women-owned small businesses that have that certification, because they know that if they've got the certification, that they can trust that status. And then the last is the federal government. And again, that's one of the programs I want to talk about. Since we're talking about certification programs, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about a couple other federal programs that SBA offers. And so I just want to briefly touch on those and discuss those. One is the 8A Business Development Program, and you may have heard about that. It comes from Section 8A of the Small Business Act, and it's basically the federal government contract program aimed at minority-owned small businesses. And so you have to have two things. You have to have social and economic disadvantage status. And so what does that mean? Social disadvantage status means that if you're a member of a designated group, and those include Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, subcontinent Asian Americans, that we presume you to have social disadvantage status. Okay? If you're not a member of a designated group, it doesn't mean you can't apply for the program. You can, but you just have to demonstrate to SBA that you've experienced some hardship or some prejudice as you've tried to develop your business. The second aspect is economic disadvantage status. Your personal net worth cannot exceed $250,000, but you get to exclude the equity in your business and the equity in your primary residence. And so if you meet both of those eligibility criteria, then you're eligible to apply to SBA and get certified into the program and actually compete then for 8A contracts. And that's the point, is there are federal contracts that are reserved exclusively for 8A firms. There are sole source contracts up to $3 million, $5 million in manufacturing, or contracts that are competed among 8A firms. Again, another reason why you would get certified. So if you're eligible, I would certainly encourage you to apply and get certified. Again, if you anticipate or you're planning to market to the federal government as a client or as a business partner. If you get 8A certified and you are a women-owned small business, just by definition, you will meet the women-owned small business federal contracting program regs. You don't have to get certified twice. If you get certified in 8A program, we automatically assume you to have both women-owned small business status and economically disadvantaged business status, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The second program is the Hub Zone. Hub Zone is the historically underutilized business zone. The program was designed to create federal economic activity in economically depressed areas. A hub zone is defined as an area that has high chronic unemployment or low incomes or low incomes. They're typically defined by census tracts. They're all over Los Angeles County. But there are also some rural areas where a whole county can be designated a hub zone. And so the way the program is, a business can be eligible for a hub zone, the hub zone program. The owner owners have to be U.S. citizens, and the business has to be located in a hub zone. And 35% of the employees of that business need to live in a hub zone. They don't have to be in the same hub zone that the business is located in, but they need to be in a hub zone. Again, the purpose is to bring federal economic activity to areas that are historically depressed. Yes, ma'am.
Are there certain industries that are excluded from these type of hub zones?
Excellent question. You know, since we do have a smaller group, I'll take questions from the floor as we're on that topic. It makes sense to talk about it now, so in case everybody has the same question. So the question is, are there areas that are excluded from either the 8A business development or the Hub Zone program? The answer is no. Any federal contract that is procured in the continental and the work performance is in the continental United States, those contracts are eligible to be competed either or sole sourced either to an 8A or a Hub Zone. There are some dollar thresholds below the, in 8A program, below $3.5 million, $5 million for construction. Anything below that can be sole source. Anything above that has to be competed in the 8A program. In the Hub Zone, there can only be one Hub Zone that can do it in the country before it's sole source. A little bit different than the way the 8A program works. But leading up to the women-owned small business federal contracting program, that only applies to some designated industries, and we'll cover that coming up. So it's a great lead into that. I do want to talk about parity because, again, the whole context was this was SBA certification programs. And so maybe not just women-owned small business, but 8A and Hub Zone may apply to your business, and you may want to consider that. And so from an SBA and from a federal government standpoint, all of these programs have parity. They're co-equal. One program does not have preference over another. And so if you see a contract that's going to come out, a federal contract that's going to come out, and one program is being used, it's not that the other two are lesser. It's just that based upon various factors, that's the program the contracting activity is choosing to use. And so my point to you would be that if any of these programs apply to your business and you're going to market to the federal government, you definitely want to come to SBA, get your certification application going, and get certified. I see it as a parallel process. You want to do it concurrently. You don't want to wait on it and start marketing. You want to continue to do your marketing efforts, and this is just one more tool in your marketing tool chest. Okay, so now let's get to the heart of the Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contracting Program. And so everything I talk about is on the SBA website. And so if you don't mind, you want to pull up that SBA website. So here's the second thing I'd write down, sba.gov/WOSB, Women-Owned Small Business. And so what we have up on the screen now is this shot of the website. And so all of the program information that I'm going to talk about is on that website. And in the spirit of going green, I'm not going to hand it out to you. It has a lot of useful information. I'll probably refer to a couple of times, but I just wanted to give you a screenshot of what, where you can find this. Okay. Back to slides. So real quick, what I'm going to do is give you an overview of the federal contract program, talk about eligibility, certification, steps to participate in the program, steps for competing for women-owned small business federal contracts. I do want to touch on reviews and protests because that's important, and then talk about resources and some question and answers at the end. Actually, again, since we have a small group, if you got a question, we'll take it from the audience, and then we'll just keep pressing on. Okay, so the program overview. At the federal government level, prime contracts level, we have the Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contract Program, and so there's really two kinds of set-asides. We've created two definitions. One is a woman-owned small business, just like I talked about earlier. It's a small business and 51% owned and controlled by a woman or women. The second category and a subset of women-owned is economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, and I'll get into the definition of what that means as far as eligibility goes. But basically, it's kind of like the 8A program in that there's an economic disadvantage status component to it. If you're financially challenged, or if you're economically not as advanced as another business, you can qualify as an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business. The purpose of the program, at the federal level, there's a 5% goal that is legislated by Congress that all federal contracts 5% of the contract dollars are supposed to go to small business. The federal government has not hit that goal, and I want to say it's been about the early to mid-'80s when the goal was created, and so this is a mechanism created by Congress so that women-owned small businesses can get a leg up and actually compete for some of these federal contracts. Previous to that, because there were no preferences, right? There's no set-asides, there were no preferences, women-owned small businesses, the only way the federal government awarded a contract was, oh, we awarded it hub zone, we awarded it 8A, we awarded it full and open, and oh, by the way, a woman happened to be the owner. So this program gives a tool specifically for agencies to meet that 5% women-owned small business goal. Okay. I know it's a busy chart here, but it does apply to specific industries. It's not every federal contract. So the first thing that a contracting activity has to look at is, what are we actually trying to buy? If it fits in one of those 83 categories, 38 plus 45, 38 women-owned small business set-aside categories and 45 economically disadvantaged categories for a total of 83, okay, now we can consider it for a women's owned small business set-aside. And when I say set-aside, what I mean is that only women-owned small businesses are eligible to compete for that contract. The contracting officer has to have an expectation that they're going to receive 2 offers from 2 small businesses. And so if there's only 1, or we're not sure if there's 2 that are qualified, then you wouldn't do the set-aside. But if there's an expectation we're going to get at least 2 offers, then they can make it a set-aside. And then the award price. I know to talk about the award price, basically we're talking about the government estimate. And so if the government estimate is $6.5 million for manufacturing or $4 million for other contracts, meaning if it's over those thresholds, you cannot do a woman-owned small business set-aside. But as long as those thresholds aren't met, you can. You can do a set-aside. Okay, so let's talk about the eligibility requirements for getting certified as a woman-owned small business. The first thing is being a small business in your primary industry. And so, as I mentioned earlier, SBA establishes size standards. It's industry-based, and it's peculiar to whatever your business does, or specific to whatever your business does. The next thing is at least 51% unconditionally and directly owned by women who are U.S. citizens. And I think that's pretty straightforward. The woman must manage day-to-day operations. The woman or women must make the long-term decisions for the business. A woman or women must hold the highest officer position. And the woman or the women that own the business must be working at the business full-time during normal work hours. Now, this last one, no minimum amount of time. In the 8A program, you have to be in business for 2 years, showing potential for success. For a woman-owned business, that's not the case. You can be a startup, but you and still qualify for a women-owned business status. Okay. So now, what about economically disadvantaged business? So all the requirements of women-owned apply to an economically disadvantaged woman-owned. So all those things first. The next test is really about whether or not you have economic disadvantage status. So your personal net worth has to be less than $750,000, and you do get it to exclude some items. The big one is, or 2 big ones, the ownership in your business and in your primary personal residence. And then we've gotten smart and figured out that, you know, people have assets in IRAs and 401ks, and so we're allowing them to exclude that income. If they're going to pay a penalty on it, we'll allow them to exclude it. The other thing was for spouses. Unless your spouse works directly in the business, as a part of the business, or finances part of your business, we don't look at your spouse's income. It is separate. But if there is any commingling, or if your spouse is involved in the business, works for the business, then we're going to look at both spouses. Other criteria is that your adjusted gross income average over the last 3 years is $350,000 or $1,000 or less, which is pretty straightforward. And these are ands, and the fair market value of all of your assets is $6 million or less. And I have to say that's pretty generous for economically disadvantaged status. Again, as long as you have less than 6 million, you're considered economically disadvantaged. Okay, so that was all the eligibility requirements. Let's talk about the certification. So there's 2 ways to certify. One is to do self-certification, where you collect all of your documentation and you upload it to a repository that is maintained by SBA, and you self-certify that you are a small business. The second way is to utilize a third-party certifier who assists you in that process. The self-certification is free. There's no cost to you. You just have to register in the Central Contractor Registration Database, and you compile and upload all your documents. What I would say is, if you do your own taxes, if you do your own financial statements, that kind of that kind of detail, then you can do your self-certification. If you have CPAs and a bookkeeper and other folks assisting you, a tax attorney, you're probably going to need some assistance in putting together the package. But again, it's a business decision. If you use a third-party certifier, you still have to compile and upload your documents. It's just that the third-party certifier will assist you in collecting those documents and making sure everything's in order. And the last step is representing your status in ORCA, online representation and certification application. At one time, when you submitted a bid on a federal contract, every single time you submitted a bid, you had to check a block that said, I'm a small business, I'm a woman-owned small business, I'm an economically disadvantaged. So every time you did a bid, you'd have to check the block. The federal government came up with a system where now you just do it one time, and then every time you bid, the contracting officer goes to that website, verifies that you're small, woman-owned, economically disadvantaged woman-owned, and moves on. Okay, if you elect to use a SBA-approved third-party certifiers, one of the things I'll mention is that they are allowed to charge fees. I think SBA did cap the amount of the fees, but the entity does have the ability to charge what they feel is reasonable to get you certified. I hesitate to speak, but I know WeBank, before, even if you just get their WBE status, they charge a certification fee. Again, I wouldn't say it's bad. If you need that certification to do business with one of your business partners, it doesn't matter. You just go do it. But I would, you need to look at it from a business and discern whether or not it makes sense for you to use a third-party certifier. So here's the entities: the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, National Women Business Owners Corporation, the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce, and then Women's Business Enterprise National Council, WeBank, which again is pretty prominent, and probably a lot of folks have heard of them. Okay, let's talk about 5 steps to participating in the program. The first thing is to read the Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contract Program Regulations in the Federal Register and the Compliance Guide. I would say read the compliance guide first. It's going to make the most sense. At some point, you probably should come back to the regulations. They are on that women-owned small business website that I gave you, sba.gov/WOSB. And I think it's important to go through them so you understand exactly what the program's about. If you have insomnia one night, pull them out. That'll put you to sleep. But I do think it's important to understand. It's like any contract, right? When you sign on a contract and you commit to performance on a contract, you really need to make sure you know what you're signing, and that's the same kind of thing with the program legs of the program. You really want to know what the regs say and what you're signing up for. Next thing is going to CCR in the Central Contractor Registration Database and making sure you're registered as a woman-owned. In that database, you have the ability to control your status in it, and so you need to make sure you check the right block when you register. The next thing is you need to come to SBA's General Logon System, GLS. And the reason for that is you have to upload your documents, your certification documents, into SBA's repository, data repository. You need a GLS account to access the repository. So you get your GLS account, and then you come to the program repository and upload all of the required documents that establish that you're a woman-owned small business. And then the last item is making sure that you represent your status in ORCA, that you are a woman-owned or that you're economically disadvantaged owned. Some of this is directly transferable. When you register in CCR, it automatically creates a profile in ORCA for you. It'll give you your registration password and whatnot. And so what you do from there is just continue on from CCR into ORCA, again, making sure that your certifications are correct and your status is correct. This is a great area where as you're trying to do this, if you're running into difficulty, Debbie Cabrera-Johnson and her staff at the PTAC are very well versed in this, and they can help you out with that. You know, one of the comments I do have here too is that I would do some of these steps in parallel, especially like getting your login system, your GLS account, and getting it established. You don't have to have that to, you have to have that to move on, but you can get that going right away. It doesn't happen in, you know, it's not like a 24-hour turnover. I think SBA takes like 24 hours to turn that account over. And the same thing with CCR and ORCA. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about the steps to competing for a woman-owned small business federal contract. First thing is to make sure that you've just completed the steps we just talked about. So you've read the compliance guide, you've registered in CCR, you logged into GLS, you collected all of your documents and you've uploaded them. Okay, so everything's in the repository, and then you've ensured that your status representation is correct in ORCA. Okay, so now that you've done all of those, what do? Okay, looking for a federal government contracting opportunity. And I wanted to show you this because I think this is a good tool. It's an excellent tool. You're going to look on FedBizOps, fbo.gov, and I think we have that website ready to go. There you go. Okay, excellent. So this is the home screen for FedBizOps, fbo.gov, and if you can click on the down arrow, it says set aside code. It's right in the middle of the screen. Oh, now it's getting to the top. No, keep going up a little bit. There you go. Set aside code. It says any right now. There's a down arrow. I think it's called a scroll menu if I was computer literate. So women owned, right? Come down one more. Right? So you can actually choose from any kind of set aside, but what I want to show you is that there are women-owned small business set-asides right now. Go ahead and click that. And I think you may have to hit search then. Yeah. And so we've got, what's that? 97. It says 1 of 20 of 97 about the middle of the left-hand part of the page right there. Yeah. So there's 97 requirements out there that are women-owned small business set-aside. These are federal contracts. And so this will give you a feel, you know, really this is the marketing tool you want to do first. And if you see that there's federal contracts in the industry that are buying the supplies or services that you supply, now it makes sense for you to pursue this program. Yes, ma'am. Do you have to be on a GSA schedule to participate in the program? The answer is no. Excellent question. Let me answer that question right now. The hardest thing in the federal government is to award a contract. We take forever. So we've established the General Services Administration's Federal Acquisition Service, FAS. They buy all of the federal government, at the federal government level, they buy all of the common end-use items, papers, pencils, office supplies, all the services, janitorial, building maintenance, plumbing, building services, repair maintenance, all of that is put on what are called federal supply schedules. And so when you go to GSA, if you supply one of those common end-use items or services across the federal government, and you get it's a lengthy process and it can be complex, but I would encourage you to pursue. If you sell an item that is common item or common service, GSA is your outlet for doing that. And so you get on the schedule. So when an SBA employee, I need, and this is a very rudimentary example, I need paper, I go to GSA, I place an order, I got 1,000 vendors, I put a quote out, or put a bid out, I get a ton of quotes, pick the cheapest vendor, and then I award it. And so the big difference is on GSA, I can place an order against a schedule contract. You hear them called schedules. It's the federal supply schedules. You'll hear them be called the multiple award schedules. And so the competition is keen, but it allows the federal government to buy goods and services quickly. It doesn't take me 9, 12 months to award a contract. And so GSA, if you sell items or services that are common use, that would be the mode the method you'd want to pursue is getting on the GSA schedule. That means that if I want, it's a lot different between you walking in and saying, oh, I supply this, you have a schedule. No, I'm not a schedule holder. Oh, well, that means I have to award a whole complete new contract versus I'm on the schedule, yes. And you can just place an order if you want that product or service. Especially in the green industry, I think this is something that all federal agencies are going to want to use, and so I would encourage you to pursue GSA. Getting back to the program, they won't simultaneously use either or. You wouldn't necessarily use the Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contract Program using GSA schedules. You would do an open market purchase and limit competition to women-owned small businesses.
One of the challenges I had, I was trying to do the GSA schedule for a while, and there are some requirements.
Yes.
I think we're finally to the point where we're going to be eligible. The problem with green is how the government categorizes it. So even when you're looking at the NAICS codes, it's really difficult to kind of define where your product should live, I guess. Like there's a new 899 code, I think, which is all the energy efficiency stuff. So it's kind of like, where does green live, and how do we learn more about those categories? And maybe it's up on the website, I'm not sure.
Excellent comment and question. Here, let me respond in this manner, is that back, I think almost as maybe 10, 12 years ago, which maybe seems like a long time, but it really isn't that long ago, in the computer world on GSA, we were still talking about mainframes, we're still talking about data tapes, and I mean, the whole world has moved past us, and here the federal government, we're still talking about technology that's 20, 30 years old, 40 years old. And so we are slow to, as new technology becomes available, to classify it, to be able to buy it correctly. And I think green technology is just one of those areas. It was like what IT used to be. I think we're okay now. That's one of the things you mentioned, NAICS codes, the North American and Industry Classification System. That's the way we break down industry to identify what's large, what's small, but also identify what sectors are growing, what sectors need assistance. And the green sector is one of those that's new, it's relatively new, and the government just hasn't moved far enough to defining exactly what does green mean and what are green products, what are green services. And I think just it's going to take some time. What I would encourage you in this room to do is to get involved in the groups and the trade organizations. This is a great forum like that, and to bring those issues. Now, the controller of the NAICS code is the Census Bureau. That's the group you got to go talk to. You got to go lobby to them and say, you need to define this at a more detailed level so that when the government wants to go buy it, they have a very definitive way of buying it. Otherwise, you're right, it's just one big category, and how does someone in the government buy that big category?
That was my question. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I help? I hope so.
They're just behind the times, and I guess you just have to call up and say, are you green? Or
Well,
do you buy these certain products? Or
Yeah. Let me get real specific, because Nick, I'm not going to change it. SBA as an organization, we're not going to change it. What we need to hear from are small businesses or green small businesses or women-owned small businesses that are in the green industry as a big voice come and tell us this needs to be changed. Because if it's just you by yourself, oh, she's just a whiner complainer, we're going to ignore it. But if we have a group come to us and the group is saying the same thing, then there's, we understand that this is a bigger issue. And so then there's more likelihood for change, and you get momentum, and then we actually get change. And that's, that's probably where that's where this program came from. We had this 5% goal, and we had this 5% goal, and we had the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce was a big part of that. The Women Impacting Policy, WIPP, some of you guys may feel it, they filed suits. It took that kind of action to get the government to do something, and that's what I'm suggesting here. Just you individually calling, I don't think is going to do it. You're going to have to do it as a group. And I would encourage it as the green organization and the green trade organizations come, because that's what's going to cause the government to move forward in establishing codes that make sense, breaking it down further so that we know exactly what we're buying. Okay. So let's say you identify a contract you want to bid on in FedBizOps, and it gives you all the point of contact information, and you're going to submit an offer for the contract. The next thing is, let's say you're the low bidder or you're the best value determinant, and now you're determined the winner. You're going to need to give the contracting officer access to your certification information on the women-owned small business, the repository, in the data repository. So let me spend a little bit of a minute talking about that, is that all of that data is secure, it's maintained by SBA, nobody has access to it except yourself and the Women-Owned Small Business Program Coordinator. I think her name's Michelle Chang out of SBA headquarters in Washington, D.C. No one else has access to it until you give it to them. And so this is a key piece of that, is that if you bid a federal contract and a contracting officer requests access to it, you want to make sure that you give them access to it. It's basically, from my understanding, I haven't done it, but my understanding is you input the contracting officer's email address, and that will allow them to get access and verify that, in fact, you're a woman-owned small business. If they can't get access and verify it, the program regulations allow the contracting officer to move on to the next low bidder or the next apparent winner. And so it's real important that you give them access. Okay, I do want to touch on reviews and protests, because one other thing is there's been a lot of news lately, or I would say within the last 6 months, we've had some fraud issues within certain SBA programs. Alaska Native Corporations and the 8A Business Development Program. GAO, the Government Accountability Office, did an audit on the Hub Zone program, and they found some firms that were ineligible, that were in the program and receiving federal contracts incorrectly. And so that, as we rolled out our regulations, this was definitely one of the big areas that we took a long and hard look at in order to make sure that only those small businesses who are eligible for the program get to participate in it and actually get benefits. And that's the same thing with all of our programs, Hub Zone program, 8A Business Development Program, all of those. We want to make sure that only those businesses eligible get in the program, get certified in the program, and get benefits out of the program. And so we have what we call eligibility examinations on a routine basis. We're going to go through the self-certification database, all the firms that have self-certified, that have uploaded their documents, and we're going to just look through those documents and verify their eligibility. And if anything looks suspect, we'll call them, contact the firm. If anything looks out of the ordinary or is missing, that'll be something that SBA will be looking at. Protests. In the federal government procurement arena, anytime you bid on a federal contract, any losing bidder is allowed to protest your size status, meaning if you said you were small, they can, especially if it was a small business set-aside, only small businesses could compete for it, that only small businesses, that you were a small business. You certified you were small, and so now if someone believes that you're not small, they can protest your size status. And under the Women-Owned Small Business Program, if you win a contract that is reserved for a woman-owned or economically disadvantaged woman-owned, then the loser can also, again, protest your status if they believe that you're not a real woman-owned. I say real, just meaning that you don't meet the definition. The protest is limited to an interested party, meaning someone else that bid. That would be an interested party. SBA, we have that ability at some time. If someone, now that the program's up and going and that if someone walks into my office and says, Nick, I know that ABC company over here, they just want a contract, and I know they're not a woman-owned business. The contract's already been awarded. There's no chance for a protest. I can go to the appropriate spot in SBA and we can initiate a protest. I would go to Michelle Chang and say, Michelle, I've got allegations, you need to investigate it, and then as the program head, she can investigate any allegations of fraud. Or the contracting officer. during the course of awarding that contract, something comes up, the contracting officer always has that ability. The outcome of that status protest, is appealable. So let's say you bid, you win, you get protested, SBA says, nah, you're not a woman-owned small business or economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business. You do have an appeal process through SBA's Office of Hearing and Appeals. And I think that's a good avenue and a good recourse, especially if there was information that was gray area and we made a decision. It gives you a chance to really discern whether or not you are or are not a woman-owned or economically disadvantaged business. And then last is talking about some resources. The first thing is talking about SBA's local district offices, sba.gov. You can go down and drill down and get to SBA. I'm out of the Glendale office locally, located in Glendale, California. There's a Santa Ana office in Santa Ana, obviously. Services Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino counties. And so, again, we have a lot of assistance in the districts and can assist you not just in getting certified in a women-owned federal contracting program, but we also do management and technical assistance, certainly financial if you need some financial assistance. Women's business centers. Those are partially funded by SBA. We block grant money to the states, and then the states will fund women business centers specifically to assist women business owners like yourself. SBDCs, very similar to a women business center. The only difference between the two is the women business centers focus on women business owners versus the SBDCs. It doesn't matter. The ownership status of the business will assist you. And then the last is the PTAX, and I really encourage you to check that entity out. Debbie Carew-Johnson and her staff, very knowledgeable, very helpful individuals with their program. And I'll take some questions if we have any. Remember, this is the only thing separating us from lunch. Yeah. Right, okay, so let's talk about SBIR, Small Business Innovative Research. Every federal government research and development facility, Department of Energy, National Institute of Health, let's see, the Air Force, Navy, Army, they all have research needs. Any entity that buys research and development, they get taxed, so to speak, on 2% of their total budget. And so these entities then take that money and they award what are called small business innovative research. They're grants, they're contracts, you're contractually held to supplying an end product or an end, whatever it is you signed up to. But the entity whose money that is, let's just say the Army. So that the Army has a list of topics that they want to research. And so they'll take those topics and they'll prioritize them, and then they put out solicitation, you bid on them, and then that's if the Army thinks it's a very competitive process, but if they think that what you propose is going to be good, they'll award that contract. And we could talk about it later if you want in more detail. Excellent question. No, it doesn't. It doesn't hurt to be certified, but having the certification in and of itself is not going to get you an SBIR contract. Excellent question. Yes, ma'am. And then we're coming here.
What women-owned industries tend to receive the most contracts?
Excellent question, and I'm unprepared for that. I'll tell you, I'll give you my gut feel. I apologize. That's a great question. I didn't think the fourth thing. My gut feel is construction. Yeah, that's a big area. And I have to say, we have a lot of women in construction now. Kind of backtracking to a little bit to the 8A Business Development Program, that program, most of the non-minorities in that program are non-minority women in construction. And you can imagine that, they run into all kinds of difficulties getting started, getting financing, just working in a male-dominated industry like that. And that's the biggest one, but that's not all. There's several other industries that are like that. But if you want, I can get your card and I'll give you that information. But that's probably, my gut feel is construction. Yes?
There's a limit for contracts, like, so the certified business can't bid on a contract over a certain level or something? Or is that the actual federal agency, the total contract can't be over a certain level?
The thresholds in the Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contract Program, very particular, is that if the contract value are over those thresholds, you can't make it a women-owned small business set-aside. The threshold was $3.5 million for construction, $6 million for everything else. Did I say that right? Yeah. $6 million manufacturing, $3.5 million for construction. If it, 4.5, I'm sorry, 4.5. And so if it's over those thresholds, they can still use 8A, they can still use hub zone, they just cannot make it a woman-owned small business set-aside. And there are some competition thresholds in the 8A program. You know, again, that's to keep everybody honest and keep businesses from getting $20 and $30 million sole source contracts. And there's also some competition thresholds for the hub zone program. That if it's over that threshold, you have to compete it. Anything else? Going once, going twice. Well, thank you. You've been a very rapt audience. I appreciate your attention. I'm going to stick around if you have some individual questions you want to ask me, and thank you.